Kia ora and welcome back to another episode of Both Sides Now with your hosts Alex Martin and Eve McCullum. We break down politics with the goal to break down political polarisation and get you interested in the issues that matter. Wow, what a week in politics, Eve. We have so much to talk about today. Shall we get into it in a couple of seconds? Let's first of all just touch base, check in, mental health check in. How are you doing after this week?
Yeah, look, it's been one of those weeks where I've really enjoyed my time exercising
Good.
to go and clear the mind, have some time not looking at my phone and seeing the absolute shitstorm that has been unfolding around the country. So, look, if you're feeling a bit like, oh my God, what has just happened? Don't worry, you are not alone. But look, on the bright side, it's a lovely sunny day in Auckland. Bit of weather chat to make everyone feel better, but a lovely sunny day. I went for a nice run this morning along Tamaki Drive. So
beautiful.
There are some positives in the world.
Absolutely, I agree. And I feel like at the moment it's like a little teaser of spring, just get us excited. It's only, a month and a bit till daylight saving and we get a bit more sunlight, which I yearn for. So very excited for that. But I feel like we'll probably get a little whiplash back into winter before then. I was down in Dunedin last weekend and that was following the week that it had been snowing down there. Oh my God. We touched down in Dunedin at like 9:15 in the morning and the air steward goes, now we do have the option this week of disembarking using the rear stairs because it's only -2, not -6 at the moment. But you don't need to use it if you don't want to. So you don't need to do it. Okay, it was bloody freezing, but I also felt very much in my natural habitat. It was delicious.
Did you feel like you've acclimatised to Auckland and you were like, this is particularly cold? Because I feel like I lived in Dunedin for 5 years for university, but now having lived in Auckland for nearly 4 years, I'm very acclimatised to Auckland, and anything below like 6 or 7 degrees is cold.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I had to 6.
On purpose.
Appealing to the younger audience. No, I have definitely gone, quote unquote, a bit soft since moving up here. But you know what? I get to enjoy bloody good summer. Much nicer summers than Dunedin gets.
Yeah, so true.
That's the payoff. But I was primarily down there for a friend's baby shower, which is crazy for me because that's like my first friend who is pregnant and is having a child, and it's just bamboozling to me, but so exciting. It makes me so
I feel like we hit that stage of our life, like, both being 26, 27 now. Yeah. That sort of stage where now everyone's like, I remember listening to a podcast of like the great scattering and like everyone's off doing different things. Like we might be numerically the same age, but such different stages of life, you know? Like I know people that are buying houses, people that are traveling, people that are getting married, people that are like doing half Ironmans, people that are, whatever. Like everyone's very different paths.
I know.
Like it's a very kind of like, not unsettling, but it's just a bit of a strange like age and stage to be at.
It is because you spend, 13 years at school with your cohort, with all of your peers. Most of us go on and do some sort of tertiary study or apprenticeships and things where you are. There might be some variations in ages and stages, but for the most part, you're around a lot of like-minded and like age and stage people. And then, you're in your early to mid-20s and suddenly it feels like you're just mixing around a lot more and people are off doing different things and you're very much... I think that's why people kind of go on that whole self-discovery and you find yourself a lot more in your 20s and early 30s.
Quarter-life crisis is a thing.
I agree.
Anyway, let's get into it.
Speaking of crises.
Yeah, oh my goodness. So if you haven't heard this week, and you know what, if you haven't heard, I'm actually really pleased for you because it means that your life hasn't been all consumed by the political news this week. But long story short, and we'll give you some more in-depth explanations, but there was round 2 of a leadership coup in the National Party caucus.
Coup déjà vu.
That's a great line.
I can't take credit for that.
And anyway, and if you are... Look, I'm a National Party voter, and I have just found this week incredibly frustrating, very sad, just a bit disillusioned with the whole process, I'll be honest. Chris Penk led a leadership coup against Christopher Luxon, the Prime Minister. Now, no one believes that Chris Penk was the sole instigator of this. He's well and truly taken the fall for it. He got Luxon, which had no choice. He fired him from his portfolio, so he was Minister of Defence, Minister of the Spy Agencies, and Associate Minister of Immigration. I think he also had Building and Infrastructure. Yeah. So, very competent minister. He's like been one of our best performers this term in government.
Recently elevated to some of those portfolios like defence and the spy agencies following the retirement, I guess, of Judith Collins. Yeah.
Which is, he's done so well, and he's actually a bloody nice guy.
Rising star.
100%. So I'm devastated for Chris. And look, in terms of who's behind it, the strong rumours are Erica Stanford and Christopher Bishop. Will we ever know that for certain? Probably not, although it's not particularly believable. Everyone keeps denying that they were involved. I think that's pretty obvious. Chris Penk wasn't involved in the last coup in April, so for him to suddenly be involved now says to me that someone's spoken to him and kind of got in his ear. Basically what and again, no one knows what happens in National Party caucus, but the sort of wide reporting is that Christopher Penk was what was called the stalking horse, so he was going to be the one who moved the motion in caucus of no confidence in the Prime Minister, basically and then make way for one of either Erica Stanford or Chris Bishop. I think it's likely Erica Stanford. The sort of wide reporting seems to be that the ticket was going to be Erica Stanford as the leader and become Prime Minister, and then Chris Penk as her deputy. Actually would have been a really attractive combination. I think that those two would have been quite cool. But obviously that won't happen now because Chris Hipkins, so many Chris's, oh my gosh. Chris Penk has not only been fired from his portfolios, but he's also said he's not going to seek re-election this year's election in his seat, which is basically sort of like Helensville area. He's got John Key's old seat, as a fun fact. Yeah. So, a lot to unpack there. I think that in my mind, they're honestly, the only thing worse than a coup is a failed coup, and that is what we had this week. I think, one of the first things I said is how embarrassing to run a coup and not know you're going to win. It seemed that initially when this got leaked to the media, and I do think it wasn't meant to come out, so it got leaked to the media on Monday night. There was an article in the Herald that there was people doing what's called the numbers. Doing the numbers means you're basically going to see how many people you've got that are going to vote for you. They say the first rule in politics is learn to count, and that's where it comes from. You've got to know that you've always got the numbers to maintain your position. So that got leaked Monday night, and then Tuesday, Christopher Luxon, the Prime Minister, and I think this was a good call by him. He called an emergency caucus meeting. The House wasn't sitting this week, so all 40-odd National Party MPs had to leave their electorates and fly to Wellington.
Get your butts to the capital.
And one of my favourite things when this happens is the media just camp out in the airports.
Oh my God.
And it is so funny. Like, they're all like, they'll literally be reporting live on the news and they're like, someone's on flight. We believe this person's on this flight now. We think he saw this person leave Auckland now. And they should be landing any minute. And we're just waiting for them to walk through. And they wait there and then hound these poor politicians as they walk through the airport. It's one of my favourite things that media do. So he called the emergency caucus meeting that happened on Wednesday morning. As I said, no one knows what happens in caucus. But we don't know that Christopher Luxon emerged victorious. And then you had the famous 75-second press conference, which again, I think it was a good call. They don't want to talk about this anymore. You've just got to move on. So in the space of a very short week, National had another leadership coup, spent the week talking about themselves, not talking about the issues that matter to New Zealanders. And as a National Party volunteer and voter, I'm incredibly fed up.
Summed it up pretty well there, Eve. Well done.
Thoughts
and prayers.
It's been a week. I'm not sure. What are your perspectives from the left? How do you view this?
Well, it's a real tricky one because for I think a left-leaning voter, we see that Luxon also isn't a popular leader. I don't think he has led this government particularly well. I think being in a coalition, which I can appreciate as a difficult coalition to be in, but not sort of holding that as the biggest party in Parliament, not holding that and keeping Seymour and Peters in check and having the odd rumble here and there within his own party, you do have questions about his leadership. And I think for a left-leaning voter, you do sort of look at that and go, well, maybe we should keep him in there, because come November, the left alternative might seem a lot more appealing to, say, swing voters and the like, because they know that Luxon doesn't look good on paper. He hasn't really proven himself to that sort of swing voter and people who might not have made their minds up yet. But in saying that, I also don't like Christopher Luxon that much that I would like to see him gone as well. So it's a bit of a catch-22, I think. And I think we'll go on to talk about a little bit more as to what the left has been doing in the meantime. We'll get to that down the track. But I think as a left-leaning voter, it's just, it's equally frustrating. It's funny. I also thought it was really funny when, was it Damien O'Connor, I think, from the Labour Party, starts handing out the copper kettle sweet and salty popcorn to all the media hanging outside.
Kind of summed up what was going on.
Outside the caucus, because it was like that. Grab your popcorn, sit down, we're in for a show, because I think this is what's so frustrating about politics at the moment, is that you've got all of this sort of infighting rather than actually focusing on the stuff that we elect them to focus on. And it just becomes into this circus. And I think that really deteriorates everybody's view on politics and why we feel, after a long week, so fatigued and drained and going, what the heck just happened? Because it's just a bit of a circus.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's also probably important to give a bit of context about where this leadership coup came from, because it didn't come from nowhere, although I suspect there's probably always people in National. I don't think the caucus have been entirely convinced by Christopher Luxon all the way through. I actually personally quite like Christopher Luxon. I think he's a really nice bloke, and I think that, don't disagree with you slightly, but I think he's done a good job trying to manage two very different difficult characters in Seymour and Peters, and trying to hold that coalition together. But if you, again, more not great press from National. So the last couple of weeks, Christopher Luxon hasn't had his best couple of weeks, so you'll have seen those unfortunate comments about small business owners made in Rotorua, basically saying that small business owners need to kind of get on with it, stop looking to the government
Be
for
an
help.
adult, stop having this like child-parent mentality
of the government.
Yeah.
Not great. And then there was the Air Force plane, which the Prime Minister is more than welcome to use the Air Force plane to get around. That's very normal, but he used the Air Force plane to get home from a National Party fundraiser, which just kind of is one of those things that goes, really? Like, political antenna doesn't sit well, you know, it's not a good look. If it had been a regular prime ministerial event, that's absolutely a bit different, but a National Party fundraiser, And then there was the next infamous comment, which was the slip up on MMP on a talkback show. And the question wasn't even talking about MMP, it was just sort of expressing general frustration at the coalition and Winston Peters having too much power or something. So it's been really hard watch. Like, again, I'm a National Party voter, and, you know, it's just been like frustrating because there's an element of that Christopher Luxon has contributed to the fact that we have this failed leadership coup, because people are frustrated with him and are saying, and MPs are worried that the country don't like him and that he's going to keep slipping up, and he has, and the problem is he hasn't really got a lot better. So that's what, I guess, where the coup came from, because Luxon had such an appalling week and a half, and they talk in politics about wanting clean air. So basically you want clean air in the media so that the leader or the minister or whoever's speaking can be speaking to voters about what actually matter to you and the policies you want to be, not having to be dealing with these sort of sideshow issues. But instead we've kind of spent the best part of the last 2 weeks talking about anything but policies that matter to voters and things that are going to make, you know, life better for New Zealand. So it has, I guess it doesn't come from nowhere, and Christopher Luxon has contributed to it. I think he made the right call in how he's handled the coup, and he obviously came out victorious. But on one angle, it's kind of almost the worst outcome, though, right? Because we're going to go through all this fuss and we didn't even change the leader.
Exactly. Who's the winner at the end of the day? Nobody. And especially not the New Zealand public as well.
Yeah.
So, big fat fail. Can we speak a little bit further into some of the slip-ups that Luxon has had? So I think as well, what I would also put into the sort of week and a half, fortnight-ish of gaffes, media gaffes, I would also include him ruling out opportunity as well. I think we said in our last discussion episode, we weren't too sure whether that was something he knew he was going to speak about, but he's very much come out later and doubled down on it and made it very solid. And we have a few qualms about that, because I think it's largely related to the fact that Opportunity has a tax, the land value tax policy, and that does not align with National's values. I would also argue that there are some other things that his coalition partners, that they do not align. They do things and have philosophies and have had actions that do not align with National's values. So I think there's a little bit of give and take there. I think that was a mistake. But I also think what another big mistake was then, this announcement, seemingly off the cuff, that we need to have a constitutional check-in as to our voting system, MMP, and he again doubled down on that later, perhaps without his ministers and his party members' knowledge, that that's something that the National Party would campaign on and essentially become a policy for, you know, if they are re-elected in November. Where are you on the whole MMP referendum announcement?
I mean, yeah, that was obviously not National Party policy. That's evidence from the fact that, unfortunately, different National Party MPs and ministers came out and said different things on it. Which I think also speaks to probably a little bit of like, there's some bad advice going on in National. You know, I read some analysis during the week and it was spot on. It said, as soon as he made that gaffe, the press secretary should have got lines out to all the other MPs and said, Prime Minister's just said this, oops, but here's our response.
Yeah.
You know, and so it could have kind of been swept under the rug. Instead, I think I read like 10 articles about MMP and whether or not we should get rid of MMP for the next few days. And I was like, because we couldn't agree on what the outcome was. And it was just frustrating.
Seeing videos of politicians go, oh, what? We're doing what now? You know, and it's that, you need to have not only a good line of communication to the public and know what you're saying, know what you're presenting to them, but also a good line of communication to your colleagues as well.
100%. And I think Chris Bishop probably had the best response. He said, the Prime Minister was just musing about stuff. Look, he shouldn't be musing about stuff on national radio. But I thought that potentially how they could have run it. I said, look, these are just sort of some thoughts that he had, not policy, and hopefully we could have been done with it. Instead, we ended up in a position where different people said different things.
Yeah.
And whether or not, look, I'm not sure if I'm not a huge fan of MMP, but I'm also not sure what an alternative system would be. And I think that there's a huge academic discussion that needs to go on before we end up having a referendum on it. And we had a referendum on only 15 years ago, maybe
2011, I think.
Yeah, so it wasn't that long ago we had a referendum, and you know what? It's just not the biggest issue in voters' mind at the moment.
No, I agree, and I also think referenda cost a lot of money, and I find it really difficult to digest after being told for 3 to 6 years that we need to tighten our belts, that we're now going to throw money towards a referendum that would cost a lot of money, that we're not actually entirely sure whether New Zealand wants to have that conversation, at least in that sort of forum. And I agree, I think if we do want to have a constructive chat about our voting system, and I think we should, I think there are lots of things we could do to improve our voting system and to be more democratic and have more accountability, but I'm not sure at this point in time whether a referendum is going to be the vehicle to do that. I think especially you think a decade ago with Brexit, right? You've got a very socially uncohesive country, Great Britain, going, should we leave the European Union? And there's a whole bunch of disinformation too, being spread out. I have concerns where we are at the moment in terms of our social cohesion and whether a party, any party in Parliament, any government would be able to control that conversation in a healthy way that's going to reap the best response, the best outcome for New Zealanders.
Yeah, that's such a good point, I think, on the whole social cohesion point, because MMP is quite a complex system. And actually, I was talking to my boyfriend the other day and I was talking about MMP and he was like, oh yeah, like he knew he had 2 votes, but didn't really know much about MMP. And so there's a lot of people who don't even know what the current system is. So there's a lot of, I guess, voter education that needs to go on and conversations that need to be had. And you're right, it's very hard to have those conversations in the current climate that we exist in at the moment. And the decision to change a voting system would be huge because it essentially changes the entire way, like, the government operates, you know, because the reason we've got a coalition government, so you've got 3 parties, and it's because of MMP. So when previously our old system first passed the post, you just had one single party government. So it would be a massive change to our New Zealand government system. And I think you're right, like it's a conversation that needs to be had with people at a time when people are actually interested and can hear it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think as well, it's taking the learnings that we've had from people like Professor Andrew Geddes, whom we spoke to a couple of months ago, who was part of the independent electoral review. There are experts in these fields who have done some research and stuff, and I think that's where we need to pull these ideas from. I'm not saying all of those ideas are perfect and that's what we need to box on with, but I think it's a really complex discussion to have.
Yeah.
And I'm not entirely sure whether now's the right time. I think there will be a time to have this conversation. As I said, I'm keen for electoral reform, but I don't know. And I think that's why I have so much. I was flustered when Christopher. I was on the messages to my boyfriend, being like, "What does he think he's doing? This is such a dumb idea." Texting my dad, being like, "Oh my God, they have no idea, do they?" And that was just me, just enraged and whatever. I've settled down now. I've had some time to chill out. Notably, I did keep that confined to personal messages. I didn't go and spread all my shit online, you know? I think there's a level to that.
I think I had a similar reaction when I read the article on Monday night saying that we had another leadership coup on our hands. I was just like, you have got to be kidding. We cannot be doing this again. And I think the thing that people forget, that sometimes I think politicians forget, and this applies to Christopher Luxon and also the people who are trying to roll him, is that there are party volunteers, I consider myself one of them, who spend a lot of own time helping these people get elected. And then they go and do this sort of stuff that's going to absolutely hurt Nationals polling, It's sort of like, it upsets a lot of people who are trying to help you.
Yeah, help us help you.
Yeah, 100%. Oh. Yeah, I definitely think, like you, I've definitely had a couple of times in the last week had to be like, take a deep breath, go around the block for a walk.
Oh, Eve.
It really has been one of those kind of couple of fortnight.
A fortnight. So was it a long week in politics?
Sure. A really long week in politics.
One other thing I thought was really funny, you touched on earlier the sort of walks of the media through the airport. We saw a lot of that, especially on Tuesday night, it must have been. It's difficult to think that Erica Stanford, for example, was right behind Christopher Luxon. We saw the National Party members leave that caucus meeting be like quite ad nauseum that Luxon has the full support of caucus and we 100% back our leader. I'm not too sure how you feel, whether you agree, whether there's 100% agreement. But I thought, super funny to see the sort of video of Immigration and Education Minister Erica Stanford walking silently through Auckland Airport to get onto her plane down to Wellington. And I think that was quite symbolic of kind of where it was at,
Yeah, and I think at that time, to be frank, I think on Tuesday afternoon and evening, they thought they did have the numbers. It seems like initially there were numbers and then a whole lot of people backed out.
It was a real
seems to be.
Momentum swing. I think you and I were talking the night before. I was being like, Eve, bring the microphones to work in case we need to bloody record something. And then it wasn't until probably 9 o'clock when we got all of those videos of the politicians walking into Parliament, and the momentum had sort of swung back to support behind Luxon. And I was going, oh shit, I've just told all my friends in London that we might have a new Prime Minister and leader of the National Party in a couple of hours. Could be completely wrong. And I was.
Yeah, I think something happened overnight, because I agree. Like, I was talking to a friend in the UK on Tuesday at like maybe 6 p.m. New Zealand time, and I was like, my gut says that I think they're gonna roll them. I just think that the momentum seems to be. And then the next morning, I just was like, I just don't know if I can see it happening. Like, something changed overnight. But another funny airport comment we wanted to touch on, and this is not a good example of women supporting women, was Nicola Grigg.
Nicola Grigg, whom I will say is the Minister for Women. Not that I think that adds some shading to this comment, was asked about Erica Stanford as the potential replacement for Luxon and kind of being teed up to swoop in and take Luxon's leadership position, was asked whether she was behind. I don't quite know what the line of questioning was, but basically asking whether she thought Erica Stanford was like that. And Nicola Grigg said, look, Erica's a great friend, but she's not Prime Minister. Gag it.
Feels like an inside thought.
Oh my God, Erica, that's not your friend. I don't know. That's what I felt. It's really awkward because we didn't know what was going to happen later that day. In whatever way it went, it was like, I don't know if you want to be talking about your friends like that. Like, it just seems so, like, as you say, like, women not supporting women. And I'm not saying women have to support women, unconditionally without, all that sort of scrutiny and things. But I just thought it was like, man, what if things change so much in politics? There could be a day, a week, a month, a year, an election cycle where you go back, people pull out the receipts on that comment that you made and go, oh, remember when you said that? So I was just kind of like, oh, Nicola, not a good shout.
Yeah, it wasn't her best moment. But I did also, before we move on from Nationals' bad fortnight, want to touch on some positive news about Nationals. So this week I've been in a couple of different political events. I know, surprisingly, there was other stuff on that wasn't just a leadership coup. And I met a couple of Nationals' young female candidates. So I met Angie Nichols, who's running in the Henderson electorate, which is West Auckland area. And I also met Emma Chatterton, who's running in Papakura, which is Judith Collins' old electorate. And I'm so impressed with both of them. They're both younger women. Emma's got 4 children, and Angie is a family lawyer out in South Auckland. They're just both lovely, and they were both kind of like re-inspired my love for National a little bit, I think. Like, particularly hearing Emma, she spoke to a group of sort of younger women, just hearing the way she spoke about politics and her journey into politics and kind of what, where she sees that change can be able to be made. Like, I was just like, wow, this is kind of, it was quite refreshing, I think, after everything that was going on, to see sort of these fantastic candidates that National does have being so good at their job. And same with Angie, she spoke brilliantly on a panel. The panel was definitely geared probably slightly more left in terms of the questions that were being asked and just the sort of event that it was. But I thought Angie did a brilliant job. And it just made me, I was like, I'm actually proud to be a National Party member for this particular occasion.
Happy for you, girl. I mean, like, don't want to see a National Party in government, but I am genuinely happy for you because I know how important it is to have those slivers of just good news stories, good vibes, and be reassured as to, you put a lot, you personally as well, in your volunteer work, put a lot of time and energy into this. And so, yeah, I'm glad that you had that experience because you need those good things to remind you why you keep doing this.
Absolutely. And it was also just like really cool to see, that because Nationals do struggle with women, but it's really cool to see they've got some really high quality women candidates coming through. So yeah, that was honestly really pleasing, and it did make my week.
Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah, there's some positives in the week.
Good stuff. Speaking to another sort of high quality female candidate, we can't keep their name out of our mouths. We want to talk again about opportunity, because if you didn't see the One News Verian poll that dropped, I think on Wednesday. Was it on Wednesday?
Yeah, Wednesday.
Dude, what a day in politics. They had some really interesting sort of trends to show us as to what people are thinking in terms of the election. And I think the big one was opportunity polling at 8%, equal with New Zealand First.
How good.
How good. I'd love to see them continue to go down. I'd like to see, I don't know really what I want to see opportunity to do, but I think I would like to see them at 5% or above, which I think is the takeaway we can have from these polls. And over a variety of polls, it very much does appear that opportunity has managed to hit the 5% threshold, and obviously all will become clear in a few months' time, about 83 days time. But no, they are in a position at the moment, based on that poll and the way that they are trending, to potentially be a kingmaker, or a Chris maker, I guess, in that sort of sense, in November. What do you make of that, Eve? And especially, we've already spoken about whether we think Luxon ruling out opportunity is the right call. One question I had earlier in this week was, if National was to change leaders this week, would that new leader sort of backtrack on Luxon's sort of announcement that he was going to rule out working with opportunity?
I think that'd have been silly not to be honest. But I also think the rise of opportunity is not a surprise. I saw some comments during the week of people saying they're so surprised to see opportunity doing so well, and I'm like,
I'm not.
Are you living in the same country we're living in? I think people are just genuinely disillusioned with the main political parties, and I think we're people, I guess, of an older generation who are kind of like baffled by opportunity and why they're doing so well.
Yeah.
It's actually not about the policies, and this goes against, and then we've said this before, and it goes against everything we say to vote for. But opportunity are just bringing a vibe that's new, it's fresh, it hasn't got the baggage of the mainstream parties. And I think people are ready to listen. People are ready for something different. People are ready for something that's talking about their future, not just going round and round in circles. So I'm not surprised, and I'm quite stoked for them. I think it's really cool to see. Keeley Wong's working really hard. I'm a big fan of hers. There's a previous poll the week before, they had them on 6.1. Yeah. I think the poll of polls overall has got them trending well. Yeah. So yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm not really sure where I sit with them. They haven't done enough for me to switch my vote to opportunity. There are some things I'm a little bit, I don't know about that. Like, obviously they could form a coalition with the national government. That's not what I would like to see. I've got some questions about their revamping of the public sector. I'm not too sure how I feel about that, and where the money is going to come from, what cuts are going to be made to be able to make the changes. I think some of the changes and the ideas that they do have are really good, but I'm not sure if people are having those sorts of conversations when they think about opportunity as a potential option to vote for. And I think that's what they're sort of doing well. I think it's very symbolic of this total just grievance with politics in general, particularly the legacy parties. And I think that's what also the One News Verian poll emphasised. And Jack Tame was like, the legacy parties have an issue. They are polling at or below 30%, the lowest that we've seen, I think, probably under MMP ever.
Yeah, I think because traditionally the legacy parties in an election combined, so that's National and Labour, combined get about 80% of the vote.
Yeah.
We are not going to see that this election.
No.
I think they'll be lucky to get 60% of the vote between the two of them.
I agree. So you're seeing a lot of people go, well, I don't like what they're doing. They're not offering anything sort of new. I'm going to switch my vote to a minor party. You're seeing all of the minor parties kind of, I think, quite fluctuate a little bit. The Greens, ACT, New Zealand First, Te Pāti Māori is down there, but we'll touch on Te Pāti Māori, I think, in a sort of separate conversation. But I think in thinking about giving your party vote to these parties, more people are thinking about the minor parties more than the major two legacy parties, Labour and National, because people feel so just confused and unhappy and disgruntled with what they have done over the past, I don't know, however long, since probably COVID, before COVID, depends where your personal sort of cutoff is for that. But definitely you've had National in the past 3 years, or 3.5 years ago, campaign on fixing the future and building the basics and all that ad nauseum stuff that we heard. And I don't think New Zealanders have seen that. And I think people are kind of like, well, I don't know if you can deliver for me. And I think the same for Labour too. I don't know if people are seeing a bright alternative either. So when they see somebody like Opportunity, that's new, it's fresh, as we said earlier in previous episodes, they don't have the baggage of these other parties. People go, well, shit, yeah, let's give it a go.
Yeah, and I think I'm like, I've definitely got some concerns with some of their policies. I think personally the land tax, not a big fan of it, don't like the idea of having a UBI. But I think, again, at least they've got some ideas that are new and fresh, because it does feel a little bit like, particularly Labour at the moment, are just sort of bringing out these old revamped policies that they've previously run, right? Like there's sort of, where's the hope and the creation of a vision of New Zealand? And Opportunity articulate that really well. Kule Wong does a fantastic job of that, So I think as much as it pains us to say, it's not about the policies right now, it's about the vibes. And their vibes are on the up.
And I'm very cautious about that, because I do think voters should have a very educated approach where they can when it comes to casting their vote. And I think policies should be forefront, right and central in their thinking and their reasoning behind why they are voting this year. But I also agree, Eve. I think people are so disillusioned and they're running on the vibe, because that's better than the alternative at the moment. The policies aren't instilling the vibes. People are relying on personality and just something else, Speaking of what the others are up to, the left. You're a left-wing voter. What's going on? Why have they not? I basically haven't heard from the Greens, TPM or Labour in a hot minute. Unhelpfully, National taken on board the airtime. But man, this is prime. Like, National's been a complete chaos. Dude.
Where are Labour? Where are the Greens?
Well, if you find out, can you let me know? Could you let me know? Because I feel like that too. I don't know if you know the meme where it's like the stick figure and the guy's poking something with a stick and it's just like, come on, do something. That's what I feel like at the moment. And I think this is the thing, right? There are so many of us who are feeling quite disillusioned with the current system and with the advocacy and the representation that we have in Parliament. We're not seeing that from the left either, in my sense. The environment right now for the left to capitalise on this shit show, this shit show of a coalition, but also just the National Party in general. Where is, the I know Chris Hipkins got that dog in him. I know he does.
Do you reckon he does?
I think he does.
Do you think he's actually an inspiring leader? Because I don't see it.
Listen. I'm not sure. I don't think I'd be casting a vote for Labour anyway. But I do. There are streaks that I see of him in Parliament, in the House in particular, where he's fucking smashing out points of order. Same with Kieran McAnulty, and I feel like he's probably the alternative for Labour. If people were ever thinking about a leadership rumbucks with Labour,
don't speak it into existence, because if Labour suddenly got a better leader, then we're going to have an issue. At the moment, they kind of cancel each other out. The fact that we've got two Chris's that the country aren't completely in love with. We don't want a leadership change.
No, I get it. But I do see streaks of like serious opposition in Chris Hipkins and in some of the other candidates within Labour. Same with the Greens as well. But I'm still not really that fussed. I don't feel like they've been able to communicate their policy in a big sense. They have not been able to go, here's what we're going to do different, here's why it's going to be better for you, and here's why you should vote for us and not for them. That has not been clear enough. I think they're trying to do that, but I don't think they've been able to break through the vibe that we've just been speaking to, that people want change. People are seeing these policies that are coming out and going, that's not the change. It feels like more of the same.
To be honest, Labour haven't given any policies that would create change, right? Like, I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to run simple cost of living policies that people can understand. So like the half price public transport, the free ultrasounds, the free GP visits, that sort of stuff, right? That's fine. But it's just tinkering at the edges. It's not really creating a vision for a better New Zealand. You know, like if you're someone who's disillusioned with the coalition, okay, you're looking to the left. Well, they're not giving me any vision. They're just going to give me cheaper ways to get to work.
I think another part of it too is that there are parties on the left and people on the left that tend to say, who reaffirm what we're all thinking, say what everybody's thinking out loud by being like, we know it's shit. We know it's really tough. And you get that from National too. We know it's tough. Yeah. And everybody's really struggling and stuff. We don't need to be told that. We live that. And it's just frustrating. I know a lot of people say hope is not a solution, but I just don't want to feel this sort of negativity about and that sort of slam politics and stuff, the toing and the throwing backwards and forwards and they're shit, well, they're even more shit, you know. It's just, I actually want to...
what's been happening.
I just want to, oh my God, put your bloody heads together, get some infrastructure investment and development, you know, have some real creativity when it comes to these policies. I don't think there's a silver bullet, and I don't think that really impactful change is going to occur over a 3-year term or even a 4-year term. It's very much a long-term vision. I don't see that long-term vision anywhere, really. Actually, no, maybe a little bit with the Greens, with a lot of their climate policies.
Okay, but then I'm going to touch on the Greens. The Greens have got Chloe Swarbrick, who I think is one of the most effective political communicators in our generation. I'd put her in the John Key and Jacinda Ardern box. She's fantastic. But the Greens are going backwards, right? Like in a lot of polls, they're not doing that well. No. And we're not hearing from the Greens. What's going wrong in the Greens?
I don't know. I am not sure. Maybe it's a little bit to do with the fact that they get less donations as well. Money is a factor into the campaigning side of things. I'm really not too sure. And it is interesting because I think the Greens are I think all political parties are very community-based, but I think the Greens are as well very sort of grassroots and tap into those communities that don't necessarily feel heard or have that elevation of voice a lot. But I don't know if that's maybe sort of rumbling around under the surface and we're not really seeing that play out in a more open space. I really don't know. And I am concerned that, because I would like to see them polling at 15%.
Well, arguably they should be, because Labour is so just nothing at the moment, right? We're not getting anything from Labour. There's no vision. Chris Hipkins is very uninspiring. I actually think they've got some quite good up-and-coming MPs. I saw Vanushi Walters in an event during the week, and I was actually quite impressed with her. She's a very impressive person. But it's just, you've just got this sort of uninspiring leader and these sort of retreads of old policies, and it's kind of like, why would anyone pick with our generation, right? Like, who were looking for change and looking for someone who's going to talk about our future? I don't know why you'd vote for them. Like, I will give the Greens credit, right? Like, at least they have got some policies. Like, I don't like any of the tax policy, but at least they've got some policy. But it just doesn't seem that it's getting any cut through. Is it because it's just the same as what they normally announce? Like, everyone knows the Greens are going to have some big outrageous tax policy that no one wants. It's never going to get implemented. Like, are they missing James Shaw? I don't know what's going on.
Well, personally, I do miss James Shaw. But let's touch on tax for a moment, right? Because one thing that has really frustrated me in the past couple of weeks has been the misinformation, I will say very blatantly, spread by National when it comes to the billboards and also the social media posts about how many taxes New Zealanders will get. That's what they are saying, they will get if Labour is elected and bring in Greens, Te Pāti Māori and Opportunity. That's not the case, and that's not how coalitions work. National knows this, and I feel like there is just a lot of scaremongering when it comes to this sort of tax policies. People are coming up, we need money. tax is a good thing. It's a privilege to pay tax. I'm proud to pay tax, and it's frustrating to have this tax conversation dominated with people are going to tax you more, and that is a bad thing. I don't necessarily think it is, not when you reap the benefits in the long term too.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the core principle of the right is that we want less tax and like less government intervention. So I guess as a National Party voter, I don't want to see a whole lot of new taxes, but I will acknowledge that I think we do need to have, in the words of Opportunity, an adult conversation about our tax system, because we've got this big problem of a aging population and declining birth rates, and I don't think that the government money, tax needs to be going to spend it on like a bloated public service and that sort of stuff. But we actually need to maintain our health system. We need to maintain our education system. New Zealand's got a whole lot of infrastructure we need to build that we can't afford to build. And so, whilst I'm a huge fan, I think that, we want Kiwis to keep as much if they earn as they can. I think we need to have a conversation about are there better income sources or better sources they can get tax from. And to be fair, like if you are going to have a chat about tax, this is why I think interesting in Opportunities tax policy is, whilst I'm not a fan of the land tax, at least they're thinking about how do we tax something that's not income, because they want to tax land and reduce income tax. So I think there's a conversation to be had about, can we just change where we're getting the tax from so that hardworking Kiwis can keep more of what we earn, but whilst we still have these sort of core public services can still be funded, because our health system is a bit of a shambles.
Yeah.
And I think there's been evidence some of the stuff that's come out in the last couple of weeks on health, which maybe next episode we can talk about health.
I think so too. That would be a good shout.
I think that I just wish we could have an adult conversation about tax. That's all I would like.
I think in a sense that is what the left is trying to do. You are seeing, the ads by National saying there are 9 new taxes. Those are 9 opportunities to think about what we want to do in tax. It's not saying 9 new taxes that are going to happen. It's saying, here's an idea, and then perhaps if there's negotiations for coalitions, that's when they can have that sort of discussion, and it can also be robust in the House as well about okay, maybe we take a bit of that and we take a bit of that, and we can tax a little bit of wealth. We've got a capital gains tax, and then we don't touch the land value tax, but maybe that's something we work towards.
You know what? I think the left should employ as their common strategy, because what you've just said is not being said by any of the political parties. They just lead with we're going to tax. They lead with we're going to tax the rich more, and I think that is it's an incredibly unattractive way to lead it, because I think that just it enables the right to have this conversation. Oh, the left just want to tax you more. But if I was on the left and you were going to lead it, it's like, okay, these are opportunities. How do we look to change things? Like,
the tax conversation is being had. We're just not focusing on the actual substance.
I agree. And I think that's where Opportunity, I think, is a little bit, again, missed the mark on the ability. They're not leading with, we want you to keep more of your income. X number of percentage of people are going to get, pay less tax. They're leading with, we're going to have a land tax. And so I think at the left, if they want to enable a more sensible conversation, they need to change the messaging. You can't just keep saying, we're going to have a wealth tax, we're going to have a capital gains tax. I think you need to be more creative, because it just I guess, enables the right to be able to say, oh, they just want to tax you more, don't vote for the left. Like, I think there's fault on all sides and where this debate's got to.
I know, and I think that's, again, feeding back to the general sentiment that New Zealanders just want these politicians to put their heads together, come up with some sort of solution, show and present that solution, suggest a way forward that has a majority agreement that we can all get behind and work towards, and we can actually feel confident that we are going to get positive change, because at the moment it just feels like a broken record.
I completely agree. I think before we wrap up, should we go to social media moment of the week?
Let's go social media moment of the week.
And I think this sums up the week beautifully.
It does. So while I might not disagree with ACT a lot of the time, I had to agree with David Seymour and Andrew Hogarth this week. This week's social media moment, just as you said, Eve, sums it up. ACT's David Seymour released a screenshot of seemingly the ACT Party's WhatsApp group chat, and a message from Andrew Hogarth, who's the Minister for Biosecurity and Food Safety and holds a couple of associate portfolios too. It reads, "Been on the road for most of the day visiting farmers, haven't had any radio coverage and little reception, so just catching up on all of this, ... What a shit show." Yup.
100% sums it up.
It garnered about 4 laugh reacts in the group chat, which to me, I would take as a win in my group chat, and I feel like I've got the laughs. I feel pretty good about that. So yeah, I don't know. If you weren't checking insert preferred news website for several hours on Tuesday and Wednesday like I was, or you had a much more relaxed day, no, I would say you would come home on Wednesday night going, what the heck just happened?
Yeah, and I think, you know what, if you have left this week feeling like, oh my God, what is happening in our country, you are not alone. I had a few drinks last night and it helped. I'll be honest, a margarita helped.
But drink responsibly.
Of course. But look, to be honest, like it has been a horrible week in politics, a horrible fortnight, to be honest. And I think that I really hope next week is better. I was going to say it can't get any worse, but I don't want to jinx it because we could have leadership coup round 3. So hopefully not.
Hopefully not. But yeah, I think we've still got around 80 or so plus days to go. So I'm sure you'll be hearing a lot of this sort of chat carrying on forward. But yeah, absolutely. Let's hope we're stepping into the next week and the next sort of cycle of this all with a lot more positivity and calmness and actual discussion on good policy and how we're going to fix the future.
Well, we need some policy to talk about. So if a party could announce some policy next week to give us some content for next week's episode, would be welcome.
Let us know. Okie dokie. On that note, feel free to follow us on social media, both sides now _New Zealand, NZ rather, and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps us out, and share it with your friends, either around the dinner table or in the group chat. But until then, we will see you next week with hopefully maybe a more calmer discussion, but
surely
we never know. Anyway, until then, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you later.